Single dad discovers amazing CEO in his shirt. Her touching words left him transformed forever. Jack's greasy hands fumbled with a wrench as the hum of the shop filled the air, punctuated only by the distant sounds of laughter from kids riding their bikes. The scent of motor oil was as familiar as his own reflection. Being a mechanic was more than a job, it was life. But today there was an energy around Maplewood that pulled at him, a current of excitement he hadn't felt in years. He brushed his brow and glanced at the clock, knowing full well that the routine of car repairs wouldn't change, unless a miracle happened to break his monotony. Whispers drifted through the shop, heightened chatter about a powerful CEO hitting town. He chuckled under his breath, dismissing the company's greatness and recalling the countless times he'd sworn against working for them. The notion felt ludicrous, a world so far removed from his own. Yet fate had a way of throwing curveballs. He never expected that the curveball would come crashing into his path later that day. Stumbling into a private meeting room, he caught sight of her, a young woman with fierce eyes and an aura of empowerment, standing before a group of businessmen. Her voice soared, a rallying cry that turned their sterile gathering into a symphony of hope. Jack froze, captivated by the way she shared her own struggles, echoing a familiar pain he knew all too well. Suddenly he realized he'd been drawn into a moment he never thought he'd witness, a moment that held the potential to change everything. When she noticed him, surprise flickered across her face, but rather than brushing him aside, she beckoned him closer. "You look like you have a story," she remarked, confidence radiating from her. At that moment, Jack was drowning in his own insecurities, grappling with the truth of his life. Single dad, struggling mechanic, trying to lift his daughter from the weight of their modest existence. He opened up, pouring his heart out like the oil dripped from the cracked engine he had been working on all morning. As he shared the burden of Lily's dreams and the daunting reality of affording her education, he felt the strain of years compress within him. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Her words burrowed into his mind, igniting something long suppressed. "You have more strength than you realize," she said, and each phrase rattled his self-doubt.
Yet, as her voice faded, doubt intermingled with determination. Could he carry the weight of that belief? The thought of leaving the comfort and perceived safety of his workshop sent a shiver down his spine. The looming cost of lifting his daughter's dreams sat heavy on his shoulders, festering feelings of inadequacy all around him. The business world felt colossal, not designed for people like him. Days turned into restless nights. Jack found himself awake at odd hours, wrestling with the echoes of her support and the whispers of the old guard trying to crush his ambitions. But what good was his effort if it fell prey to the prejudice surrounding him? Could he really defy the stigma tied to his station in life? As the weekend approached, he found himself cornered by circumstances when a colleague crossed an ethical line that threatened his moral compass. Anguish gripped his heart. Would he choose to stand firm for what was right, risking everything he'd built for his daughter? Or would he fold under pressure to secure his own financial fortitude? Each breath felt heavier, wrapping him tighter in a constricting spiral of fear and anticipation, blurring the lines between doing what was right and what was easy. In the throes of that dilemma, Jack faced the all-consuming question. Could he find the courage to seize the life he wanted for himself and Lily? Or would the oppressive weight of expectation suffocate him, leaving them both trapped in a cycle of hardship that would sap their very dreams? Jack stared into the grease-stained mirror in the shop bathroom, a familiar setting that had become increasingly alien. He splashed water on his face, trying to wash away the unease gnawing at him since that encounter with the CEO. Her voice echoed in his mind, and despite the doubts swirling inside him, there was a newfound flicker of determination. Could he really act on her words? Could he break the chains of self-doubt that had kept him anchored in a life far from his dreams? With a deep breath, he returned to the workshop, the sounds of clanging metal and revving engines resonating in his ears. The work demanded concentration, and he found comfort in the rhythm of routine, until he caught sight of his colleague, Carl, who was embroiled in a discussion with a client. Carl's body language screamed of deceit, and as Jack eavesdropped, a knot twisted tighter in his stomach. The temptation to look the other way was palpable, yet the ethical line Carl was willing to cross loomed larger than ever. Jack's hands trembled as he tightened a bolt, wrestling with the conflict pretending not to exist in his mind.
Protecting his daughter meant ensuring their financial stability, but at what cost? Would he sacrifice his integrity for a sit-down meal? The question taunted him with every turn of the wrench. Ignoring it felt easier, but with each passing second it morphed into something insistent, demanding attention.
After a restless afternoon, he could no longer ignore the call. Jack approached Carl and the client, who shifted nervously. "I couldn't help but overhear," he began, his heart racing. Courage surged within him. "I think there's a misunderstanding here. This isn't the right way to handle it." The surprise of his own voice resonated in his ears, mingling with disbelief. He had spoken up. Carl's face twisted with anger, but the client looked relieved. "I appreciate you speaking up, Jack. I wasn't comfortable, but—" the man stammered. The confrontation was real, almost exhilarating, and for a moment, Jack felt invincible. The act of standing for what he believed infused him with energy. Suddenly, the weight of his choices began to lift. He wasn't just a mechanic. He was a role model for Lily. He had to guide her, show her that integrity mattered more than fitting the mold. Later that night, after dragging himself home, the familiarity of the worn couch embraced him. Lily sat cross-legged by the table, books sprawled around her. The life he wanted to give her pressed against his chest like a stone. But in that moment, he saw her, her determination sparkling in her eyes as she struggled through her homework. If only she could see the world through his evolving lens. He approached her, a quiet resolve gathering momentum. "Lily," he began, his voice deliberate, "how do you feel about your future? What do you want to achieve?" It was more than a conversation. It was a bridge. Although he felt unsteady, the act of reaching out to her imbued him with a sense of purpose. As she explained her aspirations, he realized he had something to teach her and vulnerabilities to share. His own dreams might have felt sequestered beneath layers of grime and insurmountable fears, but in encouraging her, he found his path illuminated. Tomorrow, he would confront Carl again, pushing for change. But first, he needed to solidify his resolve and transform this flickering belief into a flame. Jack knew the challenges ahead would be daunting, but he also recognized that turning his back on complacency was the first step toward a life of integrity. The notion of a future crafted through hard choices fueled his spirit. But in that quiet moment with Lily, he didn't realize that everything would soon hinge on one startling revelation. The truth about his colleagues' dealings ran deeper than he ever fathomed. What would he do when the real extent of Carl's betrayal came to light? The alarm rang sharply at 6, cutting through the remnants of a restless night that Jack had spent reflecting on the upcoming confrontation with Carl. He grimaced, feeling the weight of yesterday lurk in the shadows of his thoughts. Courage wasn't always a loud trumpet. Sometimes it was a quiet insistence, a whisper enticing him to become the man he knew he could be. After a rushed breakfast with Lily, filled with her excited chatter about the science project she was working on, Jack felt a flicker of warmth in his chest. She was a part of him, a reflection of the person he aspired to be. If he showed her that standing up for integrity was non-negotiable, maybe he could reshape their future together. Arriving at the workshop, he sensed the tension crackling in the air like a storm on the horizon. The hum of machines was enveloped in an uneasy silence. He could already see Carl leaning against the equipment, smirking at one of the new hires. Jack's hands shook slightly as he approached, heart thumping in his chest. The words he practiced echoed in his mind. "This ends today." "How's it going, Carl?" Jack attempted casualness, but it felt forced. Carl's eyes narrowed, skepticism dancing across his features. "Been better," Carl replied, his tone clipped. Jack saw the nervous energy in his colleague's posture and knew it was now or never. "Can we talk?" Jack's voice was steady, surprising even himself. Carl nodded, annoyed, leading him to the break area, far from prying ears. "Look, Jack, I don't have time for your moral lectures," Carl sneered, arms crossed defensively. The tension thrummed between them, electric and volatile. Jack took a breath, trying to find strength in his core. "It's not just about you. This could ruin the trust between us and our clients. I can't let that happen. We're better, Carl. We should be better." Carl scoffed, leaning closer, his voice low. "You think you're some kind of hero? You'll just make enemies, Jack. This is how business works. You either play the game or get left behind." Something stirred inside him, and he responded more pointedly. "I'd rather be a man with integrity than one with dirty hands." Carl's expression shifted, the mask of bravado slipping, revealing the panic beneath.
"You should tread carefully," he warned, but the falter in his voice gave Jack clarity, a crack in the armor. Jack, revitalized by his own words, pressed on. "I'm not afraid of standing up for what's right. Not anymore. What you're doing is risking this place and all of us who work here. Change isn't easy, but it's necessary. I want to help you see that." The two stood locked in confrontation, the air thick with challenge and uncertainty. Jack felt a heady mix of fear and exhilaration course through him. Each breath solidified his resolve. As they parted ways, Jack felt a change within himself, a burgeoning confidence that hadn't been there before. He realized that by confronting Carl, he was grappling not just with his colleague, but also with his own insecurities. Glimmers of possibility unfurled at the edges of his consciousness, setting fire to his ambition. What did this mean for him in the long run? Could he use this awakening to influence the culture at work and make it a space of integrity and growth?
He returned home later that night, weighed down with the day's events, yet buoyed by a sense of purpose. Sharing about his encounter with Lily was like planting seeds in rich soil. Would she see the change in him? Could he be a better role model? As Jack stood at the threshold of progression, anticipation tinged with trepidation enveloped him. He had uncovered a sliver of strength, but as he was finally beginning to find his voice, what consequences would come from his defiance? And would Carl retaliate in a way that jeopardized everything he was fighting to protect? The uncertainty loomed ahead, thick and palpable. Jack awoke to an overwhelming sense of uncertainty that clung to him like a heavy fog. The morning after his confrontation with Carl, the consequences of his bravery loomed large in his mind. He dressed methodically, a routine grounding him amidst the swirling thoughts of what might come next at the workshop. Finishing his coffee, he looked at Lily, who bubbled with excitement about her upcoming project presentation. He feigned enthusiasm, swallowing hard against the tightness in his throat. "You're going to do great today, sweetheart," he managed, his voice steady on the surface, but reflecting the tumult beneath. Arriving at work, the air felt charged. Jack was acutely aware of every sidelong glance from coworkers, whispers traveling through the workshop like sparks, igniting the rumor mill. Carl hadn't spoken to him since their heated exchange, but Jack could feel the tension in the air. It was thick and palpable. He took a deep breath, reminding himself that change often required a period of discomfort. In the meeting room, Jack's resolve was tested like never before. The team sat around the table, and Carl was uncharacteristically quiet, eyes averted. Jack seized the moment. "We need to talk about our processes and the expectations we all have of one another. I think it's time we put integrity at the forefront of our work," he asserted, the words feeling foreign yet powerful on his tongue. As he spoke, he noticed the way heads nodded slowly, cautiously. Voices began to chime in, some voicing concern about followed projects and the ethical dilemmas they faced. Jack realized he wasn't alone. Buried beneath the surface were others who felt the same constraints he did. The tide began to shift, even if it was a mere ripple in a large ocean of indifference. "Jack, are you asking us to risk everything we've built?" Carl finally interjected, his tone challenging. Jack spotted the mix of fear and hostility in Carl's eyes. "What you fail to realize is that risk is exactly what we're managing now. It's just about what kind of risk we're willing to take," Jack replied, unwavering as he challenged the status quo. With each exchange, a transformation unfolded within him. The fear of Carl's potential wrath was eclipsed by the growing strength of his conviction. Jack noticed the shift in the group. A palpable mix of intrigue and anxiety had replaced the silence that usually pervaded the room. He recognized the cracks in Carl's facade, a vulnerability that mirrored his own. After the meeting, as colleagues filed out one by one, several approached Jack, sharing their stories of internal conflict. Their words were laden with regret. They had long sought a change, only afraid to step up. He listened intently, absorbed their struggles, realizing this was more than just about himself. It was about creating a culture that valued integrity. When he got home, he found Lily immersed in her project, papers strewn around her. Watching her, he felt an overwhelming surge and hope. If he could foster a workplace that encouraged honesty, he would be doing this not just for himself, but for her future as well. However, the unyielding weight of Carl's potential retaliation lingered in the back of his mind. What would come of his newfound resolve? Jack knew that his commitment to integrity would galvanize others, but at what cost? As he settled beside Lily to review her work, he felt the stirrings of courage once more.
The choice was clear: fight to carve a new path for himself, even if it meant facing the fire. Yet, with every step forward, uncertainty awaited around the corner. What would Carl do next, and how far was Jack willing to go to defend his ideals? Turning to Lily and smiling, he realized he wasn't just battling for himself. He was battling for their future, and the outcomes were yet to be revealed. Would this commitment trigger a cascade of change, or would it provoke a backlash that would threaten everything he held dear? The possibility loomed, heavy and foreboding. Jack arrived at work the next day, his heart pounding with a mixture of anticipation and dread. Each step felt heavier with the potential consequences of his last confrontation with Carl. He steeled himself, determined not to let his trepidation overshadow his resolve. As he entered the workshop, he was met with a distinct silence that buzzed as if everyone was holding their breath. Jack caught glimpses of empathy from some colleagues, yet others eyed him with caution, as if his boldness had stirred the waters of their complacency. His mind raced with the thought of how each passing moment could be a catalyst for change or disaster. In the break room, he overheard snippets of conversation about the meeting, people discussing accountability and the hope it sparked in them, but also their fear of repercussions. Jack's heart sank slightly. He understood that while he had ignited a flicker of ambition among them, it was also cloaked in uncertainty. How willing would they be to stand alongside him when faced with the storm? The morning passed slowly, his work feeling less like a series of tasks and more like a battle against an unyielding tide. Each email he sent and every task he executed felt heavy with implications.
His resolve was met with whispered doubts, and Jack felt the horizon of his ambitions closing in around him. During lunch, Carl unexpectedly approached. Jack's pulse quickened, measuring his breathing to maintain composure. "Listen," Carl started, his tone more measured than it had been in the past. "We have to discuss the direction you've set. It's risky." Jack lifted his chin. "It's meant to be. The way we've been operating, it's outdated. We need to adapt and evolve." Carl shifted uncomfortably. "But you're jeopardizing the stability of our projects. Some people depend on these outcomes for their livelihood." The tension in the air crackled as Jack considered Carl's words. There was truth there. Sacrificing stability could lead to conflict, but living in an environment devoid of integrity felt like a far worse outcome to him. And what about the integrity of our work? If we compromise that for security, what do we have left? His response hung in the air, challenging yet vulnerable. Carl regarded him with narrowed eyes, clearly weighing his next words cautiously. "You know the risks involved. There are ways to encourage change while still maintaining the structure we have." Jack's instinct screamed at him to push for a hard line, to break free from Carl's grasp, yet he recognized that negotiating might be vital. "Let's find a way to collaborate on this," he replied, testing the waters. The unexpected proposal took Carl off guard. "You would really consider that?" For the first time, Jack saw a glimmer of possibility in Carl's expression. Perhaps this could be a step toward mutual understanding, a reshaping of their professional rapport into something more constructive. As they discussed potential strategies, Jack felt the stirring of energy he had not noticed in himself before, the realization that his convictions were capable of fostering dialogue, even with his opposition. It was a striking realization. That evening, as Jack sat with Lily at the dining table, the question of his integrity still lingered in his heart. He had taken the first steps towards change, but every action he took seemed prelude to greater conflict. He was caught between the resonance of his principles and the reality of workplace politics. "Dad, why do you look worried?" Lily asked, pencil pausing above her paper. "Just thinking about the future," Jack replied, smile faltering slightly. "That's okay," she remarked with the innocent wisdom of youth, "as long as it's bright." Jack knew her words were simple, yet they felt profound. Could he really shape a future not just for himself, but for those around him? Would his efforts resonate beyond their fears? His thoughts spiraled through strategies, alliances, and possible fallout. Just as he was about to dive deeper into focus, his phone buzzed. The notification was from a colleague requesting a meeting.
It was time to confront the potential fallout and determine if everything he had fought for would continue to unravel or flourish. What awaited him in that meeting would shape not just his workplace, but the very foundation of his beliefs. Jack arrived early the next day, allowing the quiet envelop him as he prepared for the meeting. His mind mirrored the stillness around him, oscillating between excitement and trepidation. Would today bring a breakthrough or a breakdown? As he gathered his materials, Jack recalled the previous day's conversation with Carl. Their unexpected negotiation had opened a door he had thought welded shut. However, the prospects of collaboration meant balancing between his uncompromising ideals and Carl's cautious pragmatism. A sly awareness began to kindle within him. Perhaps this interplay could be a crucible for growth, not just for him, but for the entire team. When others began filtering in, the atmosphere felt charged, yet uncertain. Jack found solace in his preparation, meticulously organizing his thoughts and objectives like pieces of a puzzle. He knew he needed to present not just a vision, but a pathway, a tangible roadmap toward a future that incorporated stability without sacrificing integrity. The meeting room was stark, filled with faces that echoed his own conflict, hope tangled with anxiety. Carl entered last, his expression unreadable, giving Jack's heart an involuntary flutter. He nodded at Jack, a reluctant acknowledgement of the shifting dynamics at play between them. Jack took a deep breath and launched into his presentation. He articulated his vision clearly, bolstered by data that illustrated the potential benefits of adopting new methodologies. As he spoke, he focused not just on the need for change, but on the team's strengths, their collective talent and resilience. It was vital to him that they grasped their power in this transformation. Yet just as Jack felt the tide of excitement lift, Carl interjected. It's not about whether we need change, it's about how much change we can endure without losing sight of our core values. That resonated. Jack realized that while his vision included daring strategies, one crucial aspect lay in genuine communication. He had to tread carefully, framing their collective fears as valid concerns. As the discussion unfolded, Jack leaned into his growing understanding. You're right, Carl. We can't forsake our foundation. But what if we involve the whole team in this shift? Open forums, brainstorming sessions, collective input might alleviate those fears. Carl's expression softened slightly, but skepticism lingered. That's a more democratic approach than I expected from you. Jack chuckled, a tension breaker that lingered in the air. Maybe that day in the break room changed something in both of us. As more voices joined in, he felt invigorated. Colleagues began to share their thoughts, trepidations about shifts, yes, but also latent desires for innovation.
Their concerns were no longer chains, but stepping stones. Yet there was still a nagging doubt at the back of Jack's mind. How far could he push this before people felt overwhelmed? How much risk was too much? Each voice weighed heavily as he sifted through their words for clarity, feeling the weight of their futures resting on his shoulders. After the meeting, both Carl and Jack were left with a flicker of mutual respect. They exchanged a brief nod, a silent agreement to work together moving forward. Jack was learning to harness his passion, not as a reckless force, but as a guided current weaving through hardened structures. On his drive home, Jack pondered the day's developments, acutely aware that transformation was not merely about taking a stand. It was fundamentally about listening, adapting, and creating space for others to flourish. As he pulled into his driveway, the setting sun cast a warm glow over the neighborhood, illuminating the playground where Lily played. He realized that while his journey in the workplace had begun to shift, his evolution as a leader was just beginning. That evening, when Lily bounded to meet him, he knew he'd have to share not only the struggles he faced, but the victories on the horizon. Suddenly, a message pinged on his phone, a meeting request, but with a different subject line. It was from Carl again. Curiosity piqued, Jack opened it, revealing a proposition that would either cement their collaboration or challenge his very definition of leadership. What lay ahead was uncertain, but felt brimming with possibilities. He couldn't shake the sensation that pivotal changes were imminent, compelling him to step further into the light. Jack's heart raced as he read Carl's message. Let's discuss our next steps in person, it stated, followed by a time and a place. The weight of the words settled on him, tinged with apprehension. What did Carl really want? The uncertainty buzzed in his mind like a persistent fly. The next morning, Jack arrived at the cafe early, his mind churning. The sun streamed through the window, painting the space in soft hues and casting elongated shadows. He ordered a coffee and sat, fidgeting with the cup sleeve, contemplating the significance of his next choices. When Carl walked in, his demeanor was decidedly more relaxed than during their previous meetings. He approached Jack with an easy smile that seemed to hold a hint of surprise, as though he'd witnessed a transformation in Jack that Jack himself had yet to fully grasp. Thanks for meeting me, Carl said as he settled into the chair across from Jack. Of course. I figured we needed to talk about what's next, Jack replied, trying to keep his tone steady, but feeling the slight tremor beneath his calm surface. Carl nodded, taking a sip of his coffee before leaning forward slightly. Your approach yesterday was refreshing. I could sense you're ready for leadership in a way I hadn't seen before.
The compliment struck Jack like a double-edged sword. Leadership is tricky. I know how passionate I am, but I still grapple with knowing how to guide without forcing my vision. Carl's brow furrowed, and he considered Jack's words. That's where you have to find your authentic voice. Influence comes from trust, not just authority. Jack's mind flashed back to those moments during the meeting when voices had risen beside him, feeling the team galvanizing around a common goal. You're right, and I want our team to feel that their ideas matter, that their contributions can shape what we do. I don't want to impose, I want to cultivate. Those are strong desires, Carl replied, almost leaning back, a hint of admiration in his eyes. But it sounds like you're also battling the fear of inadequacy. Are you worried that if you give others a voice, they might challenge your own? The question pierced through Jack's bravado. He wasn't merely seeking collaboration, he feared the complexities it entailed, uncertain if he could mediate between divergent perspectives. What if their voices clashed with his core beliefs? I do worry about that, he confessed. What if debates lead to chaos? I can't afford to lose traction. You'll have to navigate that. Leaders must be comfortable with discomfort. Just remember, it's about creating a culture where different opinions can coexist. That's not chaos, that's growth. Jack nodded, swallowing Carl's words like a lifeline. Facing his fears felt daunting, but he imagined the possibilities just out of reach. He glimpsed a clearer picture of what being a leader truly meant, not merely steering a ship, but rallying a crew during turbulent waters. The conversation meandered between professional insights and personal revelations, with Carl offering candid anecdotes from his own journey. Each story resonated, cultivating a sense of shared humanity that made Jack feel less isolated in his struggles. Finally, Carl leaned in closer, lowering his voice. I see potential in you, Jack, but potential without action remains dormant. What are you willing to risk to realize it? That question loomed over Jack, unveiling the layers of his ideals. Was he willing to stake his vision in pursuit of a collaboration that demanded vulnerability and compromise? As he looked into Carl's eyes, a realization anchored within him. To lead authentically would require him to expose his insecurities and embrace the resulting turbulence head-on. Let's say I'm willing to create more forums for discussions, Jack said, surprising himself with the conviction in his voice. I want to align our team's voices with a vision that resonates with everyone. Carl smiled, his approval unmistakable. Now you're getting somewhere. As Jack left the cafe, the world began to shift. He felt a new confidence brewing inside him, an inner resilience that cried out for exploration.
This was no longer just about avoiding failure, it was about embracing the journey and empowering those around him. Yet a shadow lingered, a distinct unease, a question of whether he truly had the capacity to inspire change while navigating his own uncertainties. What challenges would arise when he put his newfound resolve to practice? The moment of truth neared, and as Jack stepped into the bustling street, he felt the pulse of his aspirations aligning with possibility. But would he be able to uphold them when confronted with real adversity? After leaving the cafe, Jack felt a renewed sense of purpose ignite within him. His mind swirled with possibilities, but the underlying anxiety clung to him like a shadow. He had committed to fostering a culture of collaboration, yet how would he ensure his own voice didn't get lost amid the chorus? Back in his office, he buried himself in the stack of reports that awaited his attention. Each document seemed heavier than the last, thoughts of leadership mingling with the details of the data. He glanced at his notes from the conversation with Carl, their essence lingering like a faint melody playing in the background. Creating forums, he reminded himself, encouraging voices. Jack decided to schedule a team meeting, a space where everyone could be heard. As he drafted the agenda, he hesitated over the word lead. His inner critic chimed in, warning that he would be bringing more chaos than clarity. What was he without the mantle of authority? Would everyone see him as competent? The weight of self-doubt pressed heavily on his shoulders. He closed his eyes and took a deep breath, and then opened them, forcing resolve to replace insecurity. The clock ticked relentlessly as the meeting drew nearer. With each passing moment, his heart raced at the thought of taking the leap into uncharted waters. It was only a meeting, he reminded himself, but it had the potential to reshape not just the team's dynamics, but also his own understanding of leadership. The moment arrived, and Jack gathered his team in the conference room. The atmosphere felt charged, a mixture of excitement and tension. Jack glanced around the room at the familiar faces, some eager, others apprehensive. "Thank you all for coming. I wanted to create a space for us to share ideas, feedback, and vision for our project moving forward," he began. As he spoke, the words felt surreal, a declaration of intent that felt both empowering and exposing. He encouraged them to voice their opinions, facilitating the discussion with open-ended questions. To his surprise, the floodgates opened. Team members who had previously sat quietly now engaged passionately, debating ideas and twisting them into new directions. With every contribution, Jack felt a surge of excitement mixed with apprehension. Nothing he believed was laid in stone. A particularly vocal team member challenged the current project direction, making Jack's pulse quicken.
For a moment, the room tensed, and Jack teetered on the edge of self-defense. But in that split second, he remembered Carl's words. It wasn't chaos, it was growth. "I appreciate that perspective," Jack responded, consciously softening his stance. "How might we explore that further?" The atmosphere shifted. The team responded with a renewed intensity, brainstorming and building off one another's ideas. Jack felt his initial fear dissolved in the face of collective creativity. It was intoxicating, this dance of thoughts sparking innovation. As the meeting wrapped up, Jack sat back in his chair, exhausted yet exhilarated. His vision of transparent leadership began to materialize, but it felt like the first cautious steps of a fledgling bird learning to fly. Amid the excitement, a gnawing thought persisted. In the quest to empower others, would he lose his own voice? Would he struggle to navigate the complexities of leading a diverse team? That night, Jack sat alone in his apartment, surrounded by the scattered remnants of a busy day. He pored over notes from the meeting, highlighting ideas and pathways they had explored. Yet, no matter how fierce the moments had felt, they were underscored with trepidation. He had seen glimpses of team strength, but had he been assertive enough in asserting his own vision? Tomorrow would bring new challenges, and Jack knew he needed more than just strategies. He required clarity within himself. What methods could he adopt to express his own voice while nurturing others? How could he create genuine trust without abandoning his principles? As he closed his notebook, a sense of determination settled in his gut. He would gather the courage to confront these complexities head-on, preparing for the next encounter. But as he drifted off to sleep, a realization gripped him. A widening gap was emerging between his aspirations and his execution. Would the very act of seeking collaboration unearth deeper conflicts? The shadows of uncertainty loomed large, and Jack understood this journey was only beginning. How steep would the climb be when he had to confront not only external perceptions, but the cacophony of his own insecurities? The following morning, Jack awoke with the sun creeping through his blinds, the soft light contrasting the tumult of emotions that churned within him. The fleeting peace of dawn couldn't dull the edges of his self-doubt, nor erase the questions gnawing at him. As he brewed coffee, he reflected on the previous day's meeting, the way voices had collided and reshaped the conversation, only to be punctuated by his own uncertainty. He shook off the doubts, forcing himself to focus. Today he would outline a more structured approach for the team that balanced collaboration with his vision as a leader. He pulled out his laptop, outlining priorities for the team's next steps, while scribbling down his own perspectives alongside. What would he bring to the table that would guide his team, but also resonate with their ideas? How could he nurture ownership while retaining the essence of his vision? Yet, as he typed, his inner critic began its barrage. Who are you to think your ideas are valuable? The relentless heartbeat of his insecurities pulsed in rhythm with the click of his keyboard. Jack paused, allowing himself to breathe deeply. He recalled an old mentor's words, "The strongest leader is not the loudest one, but the one who empowers those around them to shine." A flicker of resolve lit within him. It was one thing to embody that sentiment. It was another to practice it genuinely. With a newfound determination, he set a goal, not just to lead, but to embody an inclusive and assertive presence that balanced both his contributions and those of his team. The drive to work felt different today as he maneuvered through traffic, the hum of the city a symphony underscoring his thoughts. He would make a conscious effort to engage more assertively in discussions, not allowing the pressure of collaboration to extinguish his voice. Changing the narrative would require not only courage, but also reflection, what truly mattered to him as a leader. Arriving at the office, Jack was met with curious expressions from his colleagues. Sensing the palpable energy from yesterday's meeting still lingering, he approached each interaction with intent. He began asking for opinions in the hallways, inviting others into conversation rather than waiting for meetings to roll around. The openness felt risky but invigorating. One colleague, a shy new hire named Mia, seemed particularly hesitant in sharing her insights. Jack caught her eye during lunch and asked, "What do you think of the new direction we're heading?"
The simple question sent a ripple of confidence through the air. As Mia began outlining her thoughts, an unexpected stream of valuable input flowed from her. For Jack, it was a revelation. His small gesture of curiosity transformed into a moment of empowerment, not only for Mia, but for himself. Later in the day, he gathered feedback from others like Mia. They shared unpolished ideas without fear, an informal session morphing into a brainstorming hive of creativity. The sense of inclusion, the willingness to take risks, it all felt reborn. Yet, even as he reveled in those achievements, another question arose. Was he, in seeking to facilitate and encourage, sufficiently asserting his direction? That night, Jack returned home drained but reflective, laying in bed, composing a mental list of how each contribution connected back to his vision. However, the question still lingered. How could he avoid being overshadowed while fostering a space for others to thrive? He envisioned his next meeting, realizing that he needed to articulate his leadership vision clearly while embracing the tension between authority and collaboration.
The thought scared him, yet the potential growth for both the team and himself beckoned. As determination settled once more over him, he drifted into restless sleep, contemplating the approaching confrontation with his own leadership style, an internal battle ripe for exploration. Jack's journey had just begun, and little did he know, the more he honed his approach, the more internal struggles awaited him. The urge for dominance clashed with his desire to nurture, creating an explosive dynamic of personal conflict on the horizon. Would he crumble under pressure, or rise to meet the demands of his evolving leadership? Jack awoke to the soft glow of dawn pushing through the blinds, a gentle reminder that today marked a turning point. The tumult of his thoughts began to crystallize into focus, a vision of clarity infused with purpose. He was no longer merely a mechanic or a father grappling with self-doubt. He was stepping into the role of a leader, determined to reshape not only his life, but those of his colleagues and ultimately his daughter. The drive to work felt charged with electricity, an anticipation that enveloped him as tightly as the seatbelt across his chest. He could envision the day ahead, a blend of discussions flavored with collaboration and a rallying call for integrity. His heart surged with newfound confidence, not the brash edge of arrogance, but a solid footing built upon authenticity and commitment. Arriving at the workshop, Jack took a moment to breathe deep, absorbing the cacophony of sounds that had been the soundtrack to his life for as long as he could remember. Today, however, felt different. This time he would speak with intention, fostering a climate that nourished both individual growth and unified vision. Gathering the team in the conference room, Jack surveyed the faces around him. He recognized the apprehension in some eyes alongside a glimmer of hope in others. "Thank you all for making the time to meet today," he began, steadying his voice to ensure he projected both authority and empathy. "We've experienced shifts in our conversations lately, a collective desire to enhance our processes while staying true to our values." As he spoke, a low buzz of agreement filled the room, invigorating him further. Feedback flowed freely, and each contribution felt like a brushstroke painting a vibrant mural of shared aspirations. Team members leaned in, their voices rising with passion. Jack facilitated with confidence, pivoting discussions toward clarifying goals while ensuring that differing opinions held weight. Amid the engrossing conversations, one poignant moment caught Jack's attention. Mia, once timid and quiet, boldly proposed a strategy that aligned with both the team's values and the company's objectives. Her courage lit a spark in him, allowing him to realize that leadership wasn't about overshadowing others, it was about illuminating their potential.
He seized the opportunity to validate her idea, encouraging further exploration of her thoughts. "That's brilliant, Mia. How can we channel that into our project plan?" The room erupted with enthusiasm, each member fueled by the empowerment radiating from Jack's acknowledgement. These moments became their building blocks, edifying an environment that rejected complacency and embraced creativity. Jack felt a profound shift, an evolution from merely occupying space to commanding presence, a leader not by title alone, but by action. As the meeting concluded, the excitement in the air was palpable. Ideas transformed into actionable steps, and Jack could feel the warm embrace of achievement surrounding him. This sense of camaraderie contrasted sharply with a feeling of isolation he had known before. He was no longer a man shackled by fear. He was a beacon of integrity, guiding others toward collective success. Yet the day's victories were tempered with realism. As he prepared to leave the workshop, Carl approached him, uncertainty warring with newfound respect in his expression. "You've made a real impact today, Jack. I underestimated your vision," he admitted. The words were both surprising and validating, confirming that Jack's evolution had not gone unnoticed.
Returning home, Jack found Lily sprawled on the floor with a mix of papers, paint, and a concoction of half-done art. Her focused determination mirrored his earlier reflections of their day. As he settled beside her, he engaged her with questions about her project and aspirations. "Dad," she said, her smile brightening the room, "you always tell me to keep trying, to dream big. We could work together." Her words resonated deeply with him. Jack realized his journey was more than just about career advancement. It enveloped the essence of parenting, teaching her to face challenges with integrity while pursuing her dreams. In nurturing her ambitions, he reinforced his convictions. The day ended with warmth, an unmistakable sense of pride swelling within him. Jack had transformed from a man in despair to a leader establishing ideals of accountability and courage. He had proven to himself that leading did not require compromising his values, and that true growth thrived on fostering collaboration. As he drifted into sleep that night, his mind buzzed with optimism. Tomorrow he would face new challenges armed with experience and knowledge. Jack's commitment to integrity solidified, his role as a husband and father entwined with leadership. The potential for his future loomed brightly, marked by promise and a willingness to cultivate not just a thriving work environment, but an even brighter future for his daughter. He had conquered his self-doubt, embraced growth, and grasped the steering wheel of his own narrative. Every step had led him to this moment, a realization that stretching beyond limits and supporting others was the true essence of leadership.
Stepping through tomorrow's threshold felt exhilarating. He was ready to transform every challenge into yet another opportunity for greatness. Now, it's your turn to partake in this journey of overcoming obstacles. You need to subscribe now so you don't miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and boost such empowering tales. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending. Let's keep the dialogue alive. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion, because everyone deserves a push toward their own achievements. Don't wait even one more second to share. Your support matters.